All right, we're going to get started because we don't have a ton of time and there's a lot to cover. um, all right, so this is Keri from Toronto.
Yeah, great, thank you. Hi, I'm Keri Ryan. I'm the Director of Interpretation and Learning at the Art Gallery of Ontario in Toronto, Canada. And just to give you a few facts about the museum up in Toronto, our collections of over 90,000 objects spanning earliest Indigenous materials right up to art made in 2017. We have just in this past year received over 900,000 visitors, most of whom are local, and we get a lot of repeat audiences to our museum. So we definitely have a local feel, but our attendance continues to grow, which is really fantastic. We're in one of the most diverse cities in North America, so our audience is gradually changing to reflect a much more varied population from what we used to see. So as part of the museum's sort of forward-thinking plans, it's really thinking about how do we reach out and engage in new audiences. So in learning and interpretation, that role always rests squarely with us to begin with. So we're taking those things quite seriously. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about my role in the organization in terms of how I've been balancing the digital things coming at me. And I have to say, I'm not a digital person. This is my first MCN conference, and I'm really, really happy to be here. Everyone's been very friendly. But I was a total digital neophyte. We had no Wi-Fi in the gallery. We couldn't really do anything. So, and I was continuously balancing this problem in my institution, which was over here, shiny thing. Why don't you go and make one of those with an intern? And just a meeting I was at last week where all the curators asked me just to put all the content on an iPad in the corner. And I was like, okay, well, we're not having a really great conversation here. Let me pull it back to the things that I'm actually focused on, and then I'll sort of roll out the AR, VR conversation. So really, what was really important for us was to keep the values of interpretation central to everything we were doing. It didn't matter what kind of technology people were throwing at me. For me, it was all about the sort of 6 boxes that I've got on the screen. And I think I'm not going to read them all out except to say that the bottom right hand, or yes, left hand, look longer, look deeper, and again at a work of art was really central to everything we were trying to do. And it's really important for us to get visitors to think critically. We want to be relevant. We want them to make those personal connections, but we also want them to develop those relationships with the collection and what we have on view. So it was kind of in this lens that we kept sort of moving through all of our conversations. We've been fortunate to sort of pilot some digital experiences in our temporary exhibition spaces, but never anything that really reached out into the collection. So we were really using these sort of augmented reality, virtual reality moments to really get into our collection galleries a little bit better. So this is a sort of a slide to represent what was my state of mind maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, where I was sort of being bombarded by people wanting me to do these things. And I was just like, we don't even have Wi-Fi. Like, I can't talk to you right now. But it really felt very overwhelming for us, and I really struggled to understand why. Why would I do this? This doesn't feel right to me. I felt like a lot of people wanted us to try this technology, but that they didn't really understand what it was we were actually trying to do in the museum. So for me, there was a big gap between sort of what I was hearing and what I needed. And so I really had to kind of step back and talk a little bit with the team. And so we sort of landed on like 4 things that felt like we needed to be thinking about before we took any further steps. So we just kept saying to ourselves, does it do something that can't be done another way? Because we know that labels are liked by most of our visitors and they get mad when we don't have them. So we're always going to have them. Does it foster those desired outcomes? Can it achieve those things we really needed it to achieve? Is there a sense of magic? So for me, I really want the visitors to be able to have that sense of wonder that's really going to spark their curiosity and motivate them to keep going with us. And then really, is it going to appeal to our target audience? Is it going to sort of start bridging us into different audiences who, we haven't necessarily seen coming to the museum, and for whom this might be digital is an experience that they're much more aware of or forefronted by in their lives. And also, will they want to show their kids? So we really think about intergenerational learning in the museum at most of our opportunities. So I'm going to talk about these two projects. So the first one is the virtual reality project, and the second one is an augmented reality project. And I have feelings about both, and I can only talk a little bit. So I want to leave time for questions. So this project, which some of you might have heard, went to the cloisters. It started at the AGO, and it really started from our curator, Sasha Suda, who was really wanted to explore in an exhibition called Small Wonders the nature and the sort of genesis of these 14th century prayer beads. And these are these tiny little beads that fit in the palm of your hand, carved out of boxwood, so intricate, so tiny. And one of our compelling visitor questions was, we were getting asked all the time, how are they made? Like, how is this bead constructed? How could somebody do this? It's so tiny. So they couldn't answer that question through the naked eye. So our conservator took the beads to a micro CT scanner, had them scanned. We got a whole bunch of fantastic images out of this scanning process. And they brought them back to the exhibition team, and we played around. We were like, oh, maybe we'll blow them up, or we'll put them on sort of light boxes. We were trying to play around with it. And then we just happened to be in conversation with somebody at the Canadian Film Centre who took a look at them, and he said, oh, you know what? I could make this into virtual reality. And everyone was like, oh, we'd never talked about that before. And it was a kind of an aha moment. This was maybe 2 years ago. And nobody really wanted to do it, to be honest. Everyone in the museum was like, that sounds like a terrible idea. And I was like, no, we're going to try, guys. Let's do it. So we did it. And it was kind of compelling in a way, because we didn't really know much about virtual reality. Like in truth, I probably have only done 2 or 3 virtual reality experiences. It's not something I'm that interested in. I think the empathy piece that people are talking about is probably the space where I would go if I'm thinking about its value and its use. But for us, this was a chance to get people closer to the object. So to get into seeing how the object was made. I'm going to try and show a little clip of this video. I have no idea if it's going to work. Oops, sorry. Oh, really? It looks really great.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah? You can hear our lovely medieval music. Okay, never mind.
It's beautiful, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it looks really good. It looks really good. It's fine. Oh,
Maybe.
what's happening?
It's worth
Is
seeing.
it an ad? There we go.
To know we're not
See, I'm not a tech. So, we had this set up as a video experience in the gallery, and then offered the VR on weekends and holidays. And so it was a chance that we could have it be present, but not have it running all the time, just because that was operationally unattainable. And I'll let it play just a couple more minutes. I'll talk a little bit more about it. See the hesitation in her for a visitor. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. Sorry.
Anybody wants to read my
No, I was gonna say.
operational support.
Don't look, don't look.
Don't watch.
That's fine.
I can see it this way.
So Matt, what's your job?
People often confuse me for an IT person, don't they? What do you see on screen right now?
Yeah. Okay, we're back. Yay. Okay, so one of the interesting qualities of that virtual reality experience is it's not an environment, it's an exploration of an object. And so working with Priam Givraud, who was the artist who designed it, he really wanted to stay true to the artist's hand. So he really wanted us to see the carving and see the object as it was. So it was really that exploration of the story of the bead. And the thing that, so a few people said to me, they're like, oh, it didn't have that kind of like, you could have been in a church or doing all those things. And he really deliberately chose to focus on the object itself, which did sort of achieve a lot of the outcomes that we were really looking for in that experience. So I'm going to sort of talk a little bit more about the successes when I talk, after I talk about the augmented reality project. And I will come back to it and can answer any questions. So the Reblink project was where we sort of piloted our use of augmented reality. And I didn't really know much about this type of technology either, but I had worked with an artist who had developed a game with us a few years ago, and his project had used a little bit of augmented reality maybe about 5 years ago. And he came to me one day and he said, Keri, I've been hanging out in the gallery trying to get some inspiration, and I realized that everyone was looking down at their phones, no one was looking up at the art, and they were just walking past everything, and some of my favorite paintings were being ignored, and I'm going to come up with a way to help you guys fix that. And I was like, oh, okay, what have you got? So he came on board and he proposed a sort of remixing of our collection. So we selected 9 works of art, we invited him in to do these remixes. He added on a layer of a contemporary scene that overlaid on the historical scene. So it was sort of a then and now. He was the artist who worked on it, so he really drove the lenses, like the lens he put on it. So he sort of decided what the lens for the contemporary moment would be. I have a little video, but I'm afraid to show it. So maybe I'll maybe show it at the end. So the way that augmented reality worked in the gallery was we actually created an exhibition space for it. We had thought of doing it kind of like a mobile tour, but we realized that in order for me to galvanize enough resources internally, I need to pitch it as an exhibition. So we made a little space. There were 9 artworks, and we actually tried to install iPads under all of the artworks because we really wanted people to sort of, you need to do the moving around to actually fully experience. These are 3-dimensional in some cases, so you can kind of go in and around the painting. So the experience is really tremendous when you can do the moving, and that whole technology problem we haven't been able to solve, but it's certainly, we've made some attempts, and I'd be happy to hear if anyone has any solutions for that too. So I wanted to sort of highlight a few of the challenges we faced in some of these projects. I have to say, on balance, I was gonna kind of be prepared to come out on the side of one or the other, especially when I submitted my proposal. It's like, I'm gonna have a winner. But actually, I sort of found things that I liked about both of them, but they also equally had similar challenges, I found. The first one is a bit of a unique one, and I have a little hard time explaining it, but ultimately, we chose to work with artists on both of these projects. That was important to the gallery, to work with digital artists to render these experiences, just from a quality point of view and also from a point of view sort of engagement. But what we actually found was many of these digital artists were also entrepreneurs, and they were technologists. And so they were sort of bringing that hybrid role to the table, which meant that we lost a little bit of control because they were entrepreneurs who were artists, and we were sort of balancing their artistic creativity with our needs as an institution. And if we had just hired them to work with us to deliver our product, we would have had a little bit more control. But because we'd sort of brought them on for their artistic role, we were actually not as able to sort of direct how we might have done it. So in the Reblink project in particular, the quality of the experience was really strong, but there were some of the remixes that I would have probably directed slightly differently as the head of interpretation, and done some of the remixes that I would have wanted to do. So there were certain learnings that I had from that side. The resources to deliver these projects, well, we were able to sort of garner some internal monies by putting them as exhibition projects or as part of an exhibition. We definitely realized that in the VR's case, we needed to have staff with the VR equipment, of course, all the time, but also we needed another staff person to help answer questions, fill out waivers. We had sort of lineups that we had to manage, and that created sort of a human resource challenge for everybody, which meant we couldn't offer it super frequently. And then, as I already mentioned on the Reblink side, we really wanted to have iPads in front of the paintings that people could move around with, but we could not find an off-the-shelf system for the life of us that allowed us to keep it powered, attached, and fluid enough that allowed for like a 10-foot radius around the paintings. So we sort of have, it's still up. We've got 2 iPads left kind of hanging on, but we've had to really push people to download the app, which works, and it's been used quite well, but we know that lots of people aren't that interested in downloading apps, so we're trying to find that happy medium. And then the piece that really sticks out for me in terms of the sort of VR as solo experience and AR as social, that really stood out in all of our evaluation work. The VR solo experience actually worked well for a very spiritual experience of a prayer bead. So that really matched to me. So that was another reason why I was like, okay, yeah, we can do that. That really matches the intent of this object and the story we're trying to communicate. So a couple of the successes we really saw were that visitors actually paid attention. They looked at the art so much longer. They actually went back to the original artworks in both cases. With the bead, they went to the case with the small bead and they looked at it after they'd had their VR experience and really noticed some of the detail that their naked eye couldn't quite grasp, but now they were motivated to try harder. With the Reblink project, because of the quality of the execution, visitors were having to go back and look at the real painting to see what the differences were, because some of the remixes were so subtle that it was really hard to tell the difference between the remixed version and the actual version. We are definitely seeing that sense of awe, wonder, and enthusiasm and motivation to sort of think about the art, stop, spend time. It's really helped to make some of our overlooked objects and artworks relevant to people. So a lot of the works that we ended up having, for example, use the augmented reality lens to, were artworks that weren't super popular. So it meant that curators didn't mind that we pulled them out of their galleries because some of them were of religious content, or they weren't so super important to the curators that we did a lot of effort to help visitors look at them. So these ones actually lended themselves well, and actually people started to be like, oh, I had never stopped to look at that painting. So we definitely got some really great feedback from the engagement there. And I think the point that I was talking about the artists being, they had some challenges, but realistically the fact that we worked with artists meant that the execution was so high that everyone felt really confident and comfortable with the realities that had been developed, which actually really helped. The innovation side just made it feel like people were saying, oh, the AGO is finally doing something new and exciting. So, you know, that's always a positive thing. Would we do it again? And my answer is yes, but it ultimately comes down to if the story, idea, outcome drives the technology decision. It has to be part of a suite of interpretation. It's just a new tool that I think we'll definitely be using. It just sort of, we need to find that right idea and that right reason for doing it. And we need to be able to staff it, and the infrastructure has to match it. I have to say that we had a facilitator doing the VR, and he really helped the experience to be transformational. And so I can't not say enough about the fact that staff actually really help the experience, and that human engagement is still necessary to even get the best out of your technology. So here we go. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions. I went really, is it a few minutes?
Okay, question. So you mentioned the concept of, relinquishing control to the artist. So how would you, can you talk a little bit more? I mean, did you commission the artist and you had a product that was delivered? How would you do it differently? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so in this case, he's a digital artist, and part of our RFP process in Canada is, and many state-run organizations, I'm sure, where you have to sort of tender. So rather than tendering out to like a producer of AR, we sort of invited an augmented reality artist to do the work, which meant we were sort of asking for it was his idea, and it was his remix idea. So we really wanted to sort of level that space between asking for an artist commission. So it was a bit like putting the interpretive planner in the curator's shoes and inviting like a contemporary artist in to do their installation. Like might make suggestions, but I'm not gonna change their practice. So certainly if it had been led as an interpretation tool, I might have leveraged the AR remix to do something that I wanted to achieve, like show a Canadian landscape and introduce the the Anishinaabe people back into the landscape because they've been erased by the artist. So that's the kind of motivation I might have taken had I had the control in my hands, whereas Alex had different ideas he wanted to play out. And they're all fantastic. Visitors love them. So it's just a matter of our different needs and goals. So, and that's, you know, part of that rationale. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of on the coattails of that question, do you see AR and VR something that you might ever bring in-house, or is the expertise provided by the artist something that makes their involvement invaluable in the process?
I don't think it's something we would do in-house. I think it's too specialized, and I can't imagine that would, I mean, maybe one day in the future. But right now, no. And I do think working with artists is one of our priorities as an organization. So, and sort of figuring out that balancing act, I think, is important. So, but that, all that being said, I think if I really wanted to do something that I was driving the content conversation, I would not probably go down the artist route. I would go down like a much more sort of interpretive lens route and find somebody who didn't have an artistic practice on top of it. So, but it would depend on the situation, I think.
Again, on this same conversation, did I interpret your answer 2 answers ago that there was an economic play in it, and in that the funding required to hire a professional service provider is different than the funding to get an artist to contribute?
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
So what you've learned from this is, while it was a great artistic project, as a technical project, now you have something to maybe get more budget and have more control.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, especially when we're trying to move quickly and move on a timeline that's short, if I have to go out and RFP and do the whole process, it will just delay. And with technology like that, you can't wait around for 3 years. You kind of have to just go and do it. So it's definitely a shortcut that.
So what if you had a technology firm that was willing to play?
Well, I don't know, come back to me.
What that means is a technology firm that does things like artists but lets you direct.
Yeah, and I think that's the sort of, in a world, I think it's a balancing act between the content, the outcome we're trying to achieve, and what's going to get us there.
What you're doing is bleeding edge, and therefore it has to be that way. And to get the traction, we have to do things that are investments to get to experiences that then can prove what's next.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm a big fan of piloting and trying things out, but until we get, yeah. And there was a question in the previous session about whether or not that was being talked about at the strategic level, and I would say this is a great project that showcased this technology. Whether or not our senior leadership, our board, are willing to sort of go and jump into this and do it again, it's still not clear. I think it's still seen as like, oh, it's a bit frivolous. Is it something that we really want to do as an organization? I think we've started to crack it, but we're not quite there yet. Yes.
I'm not sure if there's an answer to this, but something that I've been trying to get my head around is the idea that if you are going to go out to like a third party to build this for you, how are you going to scope something like that? We don't really know initially from the start maybe what you want. You have to kind of find out through discovery, but the company you're going to be working with needs some kind of scope in order to price something. How do you get there?
Yeah. I mean, we have a digital team at the AGO who sort of is our co-collaborators on these projects, and because we're interpretive planners, we start with what are we trying to achieve, what are our goals, what are our outcomes, how might we achieve those, and the role of the interpretive planner is to say, you know what, I want to show this Archangel Michael in full polychrome, put all the color back onto this Archangel Michael. One way I could do that is to have a photograph, and the other way might be to use augmented reality. And they might put that in the plan, and then when it goes for approval in the organization, if somebody says, I think we should go down that augmented reality route, then that would give us the scope to kind of direct that conversation. That's really how it would happen. And it always happens from that, what are we trying to achieve? What are the ways we could do it? And then sort of, if we think the way might be a technological way, then we'll kind of take the steps to move in that direction.
Actually, let me respond to that. I think the tools are mature enough now that, it used to be these technologies come in and then you want to engage with a third party vendor and there's still some development to happen, so you're kind of paying a premium for the production. But but the tools there now are, it's embedded into the iPhone. This stuff is mature enough, which I think is my point, that it's just time and materials now. You figure out, okay, what's the scope, what's the message, what's the story. You're not having to pay for any development costs. It's purely production. So it's going to take 2 weeks. 800 a day. It's actually pretty robust now in figuring out how much this stuff's going to cost.
I think that to piggyback on that and to plug my Friday, which is about like lab metaphors and museum concepts, actually doing things with existing tools as micropilots then gives you a thing you can talk to a potential partner about, and they can see their systems used in a way they'll never themselves do, and that like the best partnerships are where two organizations are doing things they wouldn't have to do on their own, and so there's actually enough stuff in in a couple of videos and your brand that can get a technology company to come closer if they can see the return, they can see the outcome from. So it sounds harder than it is, I think.
Yes.
And I can kind of just contribute to having been sort of personally a digital artist and a digital professional. I think the gulf is massive though between, like you said, and I think it's amazing that you guys sort of fell into this by circumstances, that an artist who's not deciding the colors of Michael, or who's making their vision, will spend all the time that it takes to do that, and you will end up with a product that is infinitely better from the artist's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you step into we have to have a specific story, then you're having to make a lot of compromises, and then this stuff can drag on, or it's 2 weeks, but that's 2 weeks 4 times because the curator doesn't like any of what was done, so it's just really interesting that you guys fell into that. I also think it really reinforces the idea that, again, back to the the artist side of things, is this is a new art form, right? So it is just another technology, but it is a new art form. Just like when film took over, and like we had to wait a while before it all made sense, and we started to see new art coming out. Before it was just like a tripod and a play, and that was movie, and now it's very different. So I think we haven't hit that yet. I think we're getting to the point where that's about to start, and I'm really excited about that. But to me, there's a lot of crap between now and then.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of crap.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one thing we've learned through it all is the institution isn't quite, we're not equipped to deal with some of that gap between, and so the sort of squishy middle is hard, and we're working on a show in the future that is a show that uses AR purely. He's a practicing artist. It will be an AR experience. And everyone's like, how do we deal with that? And I'm like, well, I did it over here in interpretation because we're a bit renegade over here. So there is that sort of space between that we're all trying to navigate.
Sorry, one more.
One more plug.
I think you have to do things that you don't as an institution get to do. In the same way as you hire a consultant to say the thing to your colleagues that they won't do when you say it. Working with an artist gets you as close as you can as an institution go. So I think it's super smart. When we get stuck, we'll have the artists come in and they're going to just go straight past all of the institutions.
Yeah. No red tape, no nothing.
That's off limits. Like, well,
It's nerd.
institutions start working, that's where it is. It's all going there together.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
I'll stick around if anyone wants to ask anything.